Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile 1 discussion. Today, I wanted to discuss what's been discovered so far in the Legacy of Phrecia event. It's been going for 3 days now, and we've learned quite a lot about the idol system, how it works, and also, probably most importantly, how it feels early in progression in the Atlas. That said, min-maxing of this system is definitely not solved yet. That's going to take people quite a while to work out. I figured also some of you might want an update on the character that I'm playing in the league. This is the Autobomber Surfcaster. Currently, we're not yet at the point of transitioning over to an Autobomber. I do have a Crest of Desire, but I'm determined to get my own fishing rod. And with that in mind, I am still currently sitting on the Fairgraves' Tricorn helmet setup, which means that everything's a little bit scuffed on the character. The biggest change that I've made though, I ascertained that mana was just completely untenable the way it was, and so I clicked Eldritch Battery. Eldritch Battery is providing us with a conversion of all of our energy shield into additional mana. It's spent first, and what this means is that we're not running out of mana very often at all, only really in the very longest fights. The other thing that was a major turning point was when I started using Frostbite and got myself the freeze proliferation implicit on gloves. That's something that's meant that when there's a monster that I can't kill quickly, at the very least I can actually take it out over time because they pretty much stay frozen. I want to start by saying something about the 4 different categories of idol. Here you'll see a whole bunch of 1x1 idols, but there's also 1x2, 1x3, and 2x2. And when I say 1x2, that can be 1x2 vertically, 1x2 horizontally. They have access to the same mods as each other, but they are different shapes, so you can't convert a specific idol from one configuration to the other, but you could, with appropriate luck, find an exact copy of that idol that someone else might have dropped, but that's in the reverse orientation. The difference between them: the 1x1 idols are the most point efficient, but they're also the most limited. What they do is they add on various mechanics onto your maps. They are very efficient about it, and they start dropping from the beginning of maps. You'll get flooded in these from early in the game, and overwhelmingly when they drop for you, they will be rare early on. Later on, you'll start getting more magic ones, and we'll get to how that exactly works later. Magic ones are terrible from the perspective of just, do I want to equip this directly? But these magic ones can be extremely good as recombination bait once you get the recombinator going for idols. More on that later, but let's start by having a look at a typical rare idol instead. This here is Eagle Spark. This has 2 big mods in terms of just adding content onto your maps. 22% chance for your maps to attract Beyond Demons, 22% chance to contain Jun. Now, this is fantastic if you want both of those together. But you might find yourself in the awkward spot, especially because you will mostly get rare idols early on, that you only want the Jun aspect of this, and the Beyond aspect is getting you killed. Or perhaps you actually do care about that operative scouting reports mod. Maybe you want that for some weird and wonderful strategy I'm not aware of, and then you find that the Beyond Demons and the Jun are both bad riders because they're getting you killed. There are a few mechanics that are super rippy when they're on your idols and you don't want them. These ones are Ritual, Beyond, Jun. They're the ones that are most striking because they add monsters that can just do a lot of damage of unusual damage types and can catch you off guard. Or in the case of Beyond, they do pretty normal damage types, but they just do a lot of damage and they spawn in unpredictable ways. A lot of the other mechanics you can elect not to interact with. For instance, early on I had quite a high chance to spawn the Delirium mirror on my maps. I wasn't ready to fight those Delirium encounters, and so I just walked straight past the mirror. I wasn't that concerned about it. Now, the difference between 1x1, 2x1, 3x1, and 2x2 idols is that the more squares that an idol takes up, the less point efficient each mod becomes, but also the more esoteric the modifiers that you can get on it are. And a lot of these modifiers that are only available on the 2x2 idols or the 3x1 idols end up being ones that you don't necessarily want early in progression, but that they do offer you substantial juice late. Additionally, the 2x2 idols don't drop until monster level 81, and I think the 3x1s, I think it might be 75, but I can't rule out that it might be 74 that they start dropping at. So you're going to start basically seeing the 2x2s when you're some way into red maps, and the 1x3s in yellow maps. 1x1s and 1x2s, they can drop from the start of the game, and they can actually get almost all of their mods from the start of the game as well. It's only things that you would know intrinsically are definitely going to be tied to higher tier maps, like for instance, chance to get an Elder Guardian map when you kill a final map boss. Those are the only mods that run on the smaller idols that you can't get early in the game. All this means that when you start getting your idols, each idol that you socket onto your Atlas early in progression is just going to be a tremendous increase to the amount of generic juice you encounter. Most of the time that your character is between level 70 and 85, you're going to be running far juicier maps than you used to. Then eventually the classic Atlas tree starts to catch up around there, and then may eventually pull ahead. It's still an open question as to what it ends up being like with the idol system once we're able to fully min-max this. I think there's probably a couple of people that have fully min-maxed it so far, but they are a very small number, and that's going to become much more talked about later once more of this information percolates down, and once there's a few more content creators that popularize various strategies. All that said, how good are the various mechanics? I think so far Essence has been one of the big preeminent winners. Essence, if you've got a character set up that's really good at it, it's something that's very strong in yellow tier maps. And additionally, it's been really noticeable at the 2x2 idols that are best for Essence farming, which aren't necessary to get started with the strategy, but for a period they were going for 2 divines just for that one mod alone. And I do believe they got to 2.5 and 3 briefly. That's going to be the case for a little while, but the amount of idols it drops is enormous. Let's talk now about min-maxing idols. The first thing to note is that when you kill a map boss, it's 50-50 that you get a 4 mod rare idol. These are fantastic early on, but they're not going to be used by min-maxers in the long term. When you kill other monsters in the map, there's a chance of getting a magic, rare, or unique idol from them. It's interestingly the magic idols that are the ones that have the most potential here. So let's consider this General's Minor Idol for a second. This is not useful to equip at the moment. The reason is that you could easily get the same mod, but 3 other mods that may not be of great use to you, but that are just generic juice, that you could get on an idol, and you could pick that up for 5C easily. But with recombination, you'll be able to sculpt perfect idols just through smashing together enough of these, just brute forcing heaps and heaps and heaps of these 1x1 idols until you get your lucky recombination that gets you the 4 perfect mods you're looking for. That means that these 1 mod idols actually do have a genuine use case, and that you're going to want to have a lot of them. So you do want to sit on these things for the moment, and then eventually, once you start being in a position where you can go, all right, I've got 25 different idols saved up that are related to Legion that are all the same size. I've got a plan. Let's try and smash out some perfect idols. You'll be able to start doing that. The other thing that's worth noting is unique idols. Unique idols are something a lot of us were very concerned going into this about, because some of them are not very useful, but some of them are really powerful, like destructive play. All of these appear so far to be drop anywhere uniques. They can't drop until you're in maps, but that are not particularly rare once you are. In particular, destructive play, the most important of them, is readily available and very affordable, so it's not like it's super expensive. There's a number of other ones that are quite good, but all of them are very accessible, all of them are very affordable. So, the system so far is extremely juicy when you are level 70 to about level 85. Beyond that, it starts falling off a bit because you don't have all that much agency over just what type of juice that you get. And probably the most significant thing is that you will find that you get a bunch of extra dangerous juice that's added to your maps that you might not be expecting and that you might not care to have on your maps. That's one of the things where I think people will long-term probably prefer the standard Atlas system, but this has been an interesting little experiment into what exactly the game might look like if different choices had been made at various points. I am concerned about one thing with this system though going forward, and that is that Grinding Games have announced they want this to be available as a private league option in the future. I think it might be a bit risky to have as a private league mechanic, and that's because this is something that can, in certain circumstances, increase the amount of loot that you get. I do not want to see a situation where players feel the best way to play at league start is to start out by playing in a private league that has this idol system and then transfer across into the normal game once they're level 90. I'm not certain that this is the case yet, but I do feel like if it is the case that it turns out to be more lucrative than the base game, they definitely can't have it available as a private league mod you have to pay for, because it ends up being a way to buy an advantage, basically a way to buy a cheat code in the game. Very much like during the Affliction League, there was a bug where causing any sort of Abyssal Fire to fire additional projectiles served as a loot multiplier from it, and during that, Grinding Games realized pretty quickly that they had to turn off the private league mechanic that added additional projectiles because it was causing more loot to drop than otherwise would. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. That's what's been discovered so far. The unique idols are not very rare. Magic idols drop from trash monsters mostly. Rare idols mostly drop from map bosses. Idols are not rare. 2x2 idols don't come online until you're deep in red maps. 3x1 idols don't come online until you're in yellow maps. And additionally, you mostly want the small idols until you're in a position where you can get the really good small idols. That means that all of the core stats that you need to get from small idols you've got there, and then you can start putting in 2x2s, 1x3s that provide you with stats that multiply the effect of your small idols. I'm gonna leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results. Sadly, you can't use them on idols.